The outlaw was healed by a healer, but that night, he discovered the secret she was hiding.
The scorching Arizona sun was beating down on the arid land when Nathan Drake felt his body fall from his horse. The blood dripping from his shoulder left a crimson trail in the dust, marking his desperate escape across the desert. The stagecoach robbery had been a complete disaster, his companions dead, the cargo lost, and now he alone and wounded was wandering aimlessly through the wilderness of the Superstition Mountains. His vision began to blur, the shapes of rocks and cacti blending into a confused blur. Nathan had been one of the most notorious bandits in the territory, but now at the age of 32, it seemed that his reign of exploits was coming to an end. His last strength left him and darkness enveloped him before his body even touched the ground. When consciousness returned, it brought with it the scent of unknown herbs and the cozy warmth of a wool blanket. Nathan slowly opened his eyes and found himself inside a modest wooden hut. Tallow candles illuminated the room with soft light, revealing shelves filled with jars of dried plants and mysterious tinctures. Por fin despiertas, a female voice sounded nearby, heavy with a Mexican accent. I thought I'd lose you to death. Rosa Martinez appeared in his field of vision, a woman of around 25 with long braided black hair and eyes as deep as wells of water in the desert. She was wearing a simple skirt and a white cotton blouse, but there was a dignity in her bearing that drew immediate attention. How long? Nathan tried to speak, his throat dry as sandpaper. 3 days, Rosa replied, offering him water in a pewter mug. The bullet went clean through, but the fever almost took you. My ancestral medicine is strong, but you're also stubborn about surviving. Nathan watched his savior with growing curiosity. There was something about her that didn't fit in with the simplicity of the hut, an aristocratic, bearing a glint of knowledge in her eyes that suggested more than a simple mountain healer. Why did you help me? He asked after quenching his thirst. Do you know who I am? Rosa smiled, a gesture that mixed wisdom and sadness. I know very well who Nathan Drake is. His fame reached these mountains a long time ago, but it's not for me to judge men, only to heal them when I can. In the days that followed, while regaining his strength, Nathan discovered that Rosa had been living alone in the hut for 5 years. She knew every medicinal plant in the region, every hidden trail between the rocks, every water source in the mountains. But there were times when he caught her looking at the horizon with a distant expression, as if she were carrying an invisible weight on her shoulders. One night, when the wind howled between the rocks and the full moon bathed the mountains in its silvery light, Nathan woke up to the sound of altered voices coming from outside. Through the window, he saw Rosa confronting 3 armed men, their faces partially hidden by bandanas. We know you're the last one. One of them growled, his voice laden with menace. Tell us where the mine is and nobody has to get hurt. The mine is lost, Rosa replied firmly. It died with my family. Vines, there's nothing here for you. The men advanced menacingly, but before they could reach her, Nathan emerged from the doorway, wielding his recovered revolver. Even wounded, his reputation preceded him. The bandits retreated, promising to return with reinforcements. After they left, Rosa remained silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the stars. Now you know, she finally said. I'm the last survivor of the Martinez family. My priest discovered the legend of the lost gold mine, but it cost us everything. The bandits killed everyone, but I escaped carrying the secret with me. Nathan felt the weight of that revelation. The legendary gold mine in the Superstition Mountains, a treasure that had inspired decades of searching and bloodshed. And there he was, a wounded thief being cared for by the only person who knew its true location. Why are you telling me this? He asked, aware of the irony of the situation. Rosa turned to him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. Because I need your help, Senor Drake. The bandits won't give up, and I can't protect the secret alone forever. I need someone who understands both the value of gold and the price it charges. Nathan felt something change inside him. For the first time in his life of crime, he was faced with a choice that went beyond simple personal gain. Rosa had not only saved him from physical death, but perhaps also offered him a chance at redemption. What if I'm just like them, he wondered. A bandit looking for gold? No, Rosa smiled, gently touching his face. You're different. I saw it in your eyes. As I healed you, there's honor hidden under all those scars. The night advanced, enveloping the hut in the shadows of the mountains as Nathan contemplated his decision. The wind whispered old stories of greed and tragedy, but also brought with it the promise of a new dawn. In his heart, a silent battle raged between the man he had been and the man he could become. Rosa Martinez had kept more than the secret of a gold mine. She carried with her the possibility of redemption for a lost soul. And in the Superstition Mountains, where legends and reality mingled like dust in the wind, a new story began to unfold. The next few days in Rosa's cabin brought a subtle change in the dynamic between her and Nathan. The outlaw used to relying solely on his revolver, and Cunning found himself increasingly intrigued by the mysterious healer. He watched her prepare her medicines, her precise gestures, as she mixed herbs in small glass jars, muttering ancient words in Spanish that sounded like prayers. One afternoon, while Rosa was changing the bandages on her shoulder, Nathan noticed a thin scar on her neck, partially hidden by the collar of her blouse. "Was it from the night you lost your family?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Rosa hesitated for a moment, her fingers instinctively touching the mark. "See, the man who killed me, Padre. He tried to make me talk, but I managed to escape." Her eyes darkened at the memory. "I was just a 16-year-old girl, but that night turned me into a woman." "Can you describe that man?" Nathan asked, feeling a familiar wave of anger rise in his chest. "He has a scar across his right eye," Rosa replied, her hand shaking slightly. "His name is McCullough. James McCullough. He's the leader of the bandits who are still hunting me." Nathan knew that name McCullough was a dark legend in the territories, known for his brutality and obsession with the legendary gold mine. Many believed that he had gone mad in his search, leaving a trail of death wherever he went. "Why didn't he leave these mountains?" Nathan asked. "He could have started a new life anywhere." Rosa stood up and walked over to the window. The afternoon sun painted elongated shadows on the walls of the hut. "This land, it's not just about the gold. The mountains hold secrets older than our ancestors. Mi Padre discovered this. The mine isn't just a mine, it's a portal to something deeper and more sacred." Nathan felt a shiver run down his spine. He had heard stories about the Superstition Mountains, Apache legends about guardian spirits, and sacred places where the veil between worlds was thinner. He had always considered them the fantasies of drunks and madmen, but something in Rosa's voice made him doubt his certainties. "Show me," he asked, surprising himself. Rosa studied him for a long time, as if measuring his worth. Finally, she nodded. "Mañana, your shoulder is strong enough for a short walk." The next morning they set off before sunrise. Rosa guided them along invisible trails between the rocks, her knowledge of the terrain showing years of intimacy with these mountains. Nathan followed her in silence, noticing how she occasionally stopped to touch certain rocks or mutter words in a language that was neither English nor Spanish. After 2 hours of walking, they reached a small valley hidden between walls of red rock. In the center, an ancient mesquite tree stood, its exposed roots writhing like petrified snakes. "Here," Rosa said, pointing to almost invisible markings on the rocks. "These are Apache symbols. They tell the story of an ancient people who kept the secrets of the land. Mi Padre studied them for years, learning their meanings." Nathan examined the symbols with growing fascination. "What about the mine? It's part of something bigger," Rosa explained, her voice filled with reverence. "The Apache believed that there were places where gold sprang from the earth itself, nourished by the blood of their gods. Sacred places that should not be disturbed. But your father found one of these places," Nathan concluded. "See, and he paid for it with his life." Rosa approached the mesquite tree, touching its gnarled trunk. "McCullough and his men, they don't understand. They think only of gold, but there are forces here that cannot be controlled by greed." Nathan felt the weight of that revelation. His whole life had been guided by the search for easy riches for the next big break. But there in that hidden valley, he was beginning to understand that some fortunes came at too high a price. A sudden noise made them turn, stones rolling somewhere above. Rosa grabbed his arm. "We're not alone," she whispered. "We need to go. Now." They returned to the hut by a different, longer, and more tortuous route. Nathan noticed that Rosa purposely left false trails, crossing streams and retracing her steps. She was a master at hiding her tracks. When they finally arrived, the sun was setting, dyeing the sky blood red. Rosa locked the door and started preparing tea with herbs Nathan didn't recognize. "McCullough's getting closer," she said as the herbs boiled. "I can feel it, like a hungry wolf circling its prey." Nathan checked his revolver, a habit from years on the trails. "Why do you trust me, Rosa? I'm just another bandit." She smiled, that same enigmatic smile that had intrigued him from day one. "Because your eyes don't just shine with greed when I talk about gold. There's curiosity, respect, and something more." He moved closer, lightly touching her scarred face. "Besides the mountains speak to me. They say you have an important role to play." Nathan wanted to doubt her, to laugh at her superstitions, but something in her words resonated with a deeper truth that he couldn't ignore. There in the growing shadows of the night, he felt at a crossroads between his criminal past and an uncertain but potentially redeeming future. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice hoarse with unexpressed emotion. "We prepare," Rosa replied, her eyes shining in the candlelight. "The storm is coming, Nathan Drake, and when it comes we'll need each other more than you know." Dawn found Nathan watching out of the cabin window, his revolver resting in his lap as he watched the shadows fade between the rocks. Rosa's warning of McCullough's approach had kept him alert throughout the night, his survival instincts sharpened by years on the trails. Rosa slept in her small bed in the corner of the room, her normally tense face now serene in the soft morning light. Nathan found himself studying her features, realizing how the scars of her past, although invisible, had shaped every aspect of her existence. Like him, she carried the weight of a life marked by violence, but unlike him, she had found a greater purpose than simple survival. A sudden movement in the rocks above the hut made Nathan instinctively shrink into the shadows. A lone figure moved cautiously among the parched bushes, not McCullough, but certainly one of his scouts. The bandit observed the area for a few minutes before disappearing back into the mountains. "They're surrounding the area," Rosa commented softly, having woken up without Nathan noticing. "Like hungry coyotes." "We need to get out of here," Nathan replied, but Rosa was already shaking her head. "No, this hut has protections that you can't see." She stood up, starting to prepare her usual breakfast of tortillas and herbal tea. "Besides, there's something I need to show you before McCullough arrives." After the meal, Rosa guided Nathan to a trapdoor hidden under a worn carpet. A steep staircase led down to a small cellar carved out of the living rock, lit only by a single oil lamp. The air was heavy with the smell of earth and old memories. "Mi padre kept his secrets here," Rosa explained, moving between shelves full of old books and strange artifacts. Matt's diaries, relics he found during his explorations. She pulled out a leather-bound volume, its pages yellowed by time. This was his personal diary. Here he documented everything about the mine, not just its location, but the mysteries it held. Nathan flipped through the pages, carefully finding detailed drawings of indigenous symbols, notes in Spanish and English, and carefully drawn maps. "Your father was a learned man," he observed. "He was a professor in Mexico City." Rosa confirmed, a touch of pride in her voice. But his passion for archaeology brought him north. He believed that the Apache legends about the mine contained ancient truths that the modern world had forgotten. One drawing in particular caught Nathan's eye, a representation of a circular cave with strange symbols carved into its walls. "Is that the entrance to the mine?" "One of the entrances," Rosa corrected. "There are several, all connected by ancient tunnels. The Apache said they were the veins of the earth, carrying not only gold, but also spirits and memories." Nathan felt an inexplicable chill. "And McCullough, what does he know about it?" "He was one of the men my father hired as a guide." Rosa revealed, her face hardening at the memory. "At first he pretended to share mi padre's interest in Apache history and culture. But his true nature soon revealed itself. A distant crash interrupted the conversation. Thunder or gunfire, it was impossible to tell." Rosa quickly put the diary away in its hiding place. "Let's go. It's not safe to stay down here for long." Back at the hut, Nathan noticed that the sky had darkened, heavy clouds gathering over the mountains. Rosa moved quickly through the house, storing essential items in a leather bag. "If we need to escape," she explained, noticing his questioning look, "there are secret trails that only I know about, natural tunnels that cut through the heart of the mountains. Like the ones in the Apache legends, Nathan commented, beginning to understand the true extent of what Rosa was protecting. See, the mountains are like a living labyrinth. She stopped her work, staring at him intensely. Nathan, I need you to understand something. If McCullough finds the mine, it won't just be the gold he'll steal. There are ancient forces sleeping in those caves, forces that the Apache swore to protect. And your father found that out the hard way, Nathan concluded. Rosa nodded sadly. The night McCullough betrayed us, me Padre had just discovered something in the caves, something that deeply disturbed him. He burned part of his notes before the bandits arrived, saying that some secrets should remain buried. A heavy silence fell over them, broken only by the wind that began to howl between the rocks. Nathan realized that he was being drawn into something much bigger than a simple story of lost treasure. The legends he had always considered fanciful were beginning to take on a weight of reality that he couldn't ignore. Why tell me all this now? He finally asked. Rosa approached, her dark eyes shining with a mixture of fear and determination. Because I need you to understand what's really at stake. It's not just my life that McCullough threatens, but an ancient balance that keeps these lands at peace. Nathan felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. His whole life had been defined by selfish choices, by the search for the next big score. Now he was faced with a decision that transcended his own greed. What do you want from me, Rosa? He asked, his voice hoarse with conflicting emotions. I want you to choose sides, she replied simply. Not between me and McCullough, but between protecting something sacred or letting it be desecrated by greed. The first touch of rain began to fall on the roof of the hut, a soft patter that seemed to mark the time they had left. Nathan looked out of the window, watching the dark clouds approaching, carrying with them more than just the storm. In his heart, he knew that he had already made his choice the moment Rosa shared her secrets with him. All that remained was to find out if he would be strong enough to honor her when McCullough finally arrived. The rain that had begun as a gentle melody on the roof of the cabin soon turned into a raging torrent typical of Arizona summer storms. Nathan and Rosa remained alert, knowing that even the bad weather wouldn't be enough to stop McCullough and his men for long. The storm is a blessing, Rosa murmured, lighting another candle as the afternoon shadows lengthened inside the cabin. The spirits of the mountains give us time to prepare. Nathan wanted to share her mystical faith, but years on the trails had taught him to rely more on gunpowder than prayers. Still, something about Rosa's conviction touched him in a way he couldn't explain. As he checked his ammunition for the third time, his memories wandered back to the first robbery he had committed so long ago, a desperate young man seeking a better life through crime. Have you ever killed anyone, Rosa? The question slipped out before she could stop it. She stopped her work of organizing medicinal herbs, her dark eyes meeting his through the dimness. Once, the night my family died, one of McCullough's men, his voice faltered for a moment. He was torturing my little brother. I took my father's gun and shot him. Nathan felt a knot forming in his throat. How old was your brother? 12, Rosa answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Pablo dreamed of being an explorer, like me, Padre. He died protecting the diaries that McCullough wanted to steal. A particularly loud clap of thunder shook the hut, making the candle flames dance. Nathan approached Rosa, noticing how she shuddered at the noise. After that night, she continued, I swore I would never take another life. Medicine became my way of making up for that death, even if it was in self-defense. Is that why you saved me? Nathan asked softly. To make up for it, Rosa shook her head, a small smile crossing her face. No, I saved you because when I found you bleeding in the dust, I saw in your eyes the same thing I see every morning in a mirror, someone looking for redemption. The words hit Nathan like a punch in the gut. For years he had hidden behind his reputation as a ruthless thug, but this extraordinary woman had read him like an open book from the first moment. A subtle noise outside made them both freeze. Through the curtain of rain, shadows moved between the rocks, more than a dozen men positioning themselves strategically around the hut. McCullough, Rosa whispered, her face paling. He's here sooner than I expected. Nathan pulled Rosa away from the windows as the first shot shattered the glass, sending shards everywhere. The trapdoor, he shouted over the noise of the storm and the gunfire. We need to get to it. More bullets pierced the wooden walls as they crouched around the hut. Rosa grabbed her already prepared bag and some vials from her shelves. There's a passage in the basement, she explained quickly. It leads to the tunnels I mentioned. They managed to reach the trapdoor when the front door was kicked in. McCullough's voice thundered to the cabin. Get out now, and maybe I'll let you live long enough to see where I buried the rest of the Martinez family. Nathan felt Rosa trembling beside him, but her eyes shone with steely determination. They quickly climbed down the ladder, closing the trapdoor above them. In the darkness of the basement, Rosa guided them between the shelves to a seemingly solid wall. Mi padre built this, she explained, pressing a specific stone that made part of the wall slide silently. He always said that we should know both the ways of the light and the shadows. The sound of heavy boots on the upper floor hurried them into the secret passage. It was a narrow tunnel, its walls stained with ancient Indian paintings that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The symbols will guide us, Rosa murmured, her fingers tracing specific marks as they advanced. They are maps left by the ancients showing the way through the heart of the mountain. Behind them, cries of frustration echoed from the cellar. McCullough and his men had discovered their escape. Nathan knew it wouldn't be long before they found the secret passage. Where does it lead? He asked as they followed the tunnel that snaked deeper and deeper into the mountain. To a sacred place, Rosa replied, her voice laden with reverence. A shrine that my priest discovered where the Apache held their most secret ceremonies. It's also where the main entrance to the mine is hidden, Nathan added, beginning to understand. Yes, but it's more than that. Rosa stopped briefly, turning to face him in the dimness of the tunnel. Nathan, what we find there could change everything. Not just our lives, but the very balance of this earth. The distant sound of voices echoing through the tunnels made them resume their hasty escape. Nathan realized that they were descending deeper and deeper, the air becoming denser and charged with an ancient smell of earth and mystery. Rosa, he called softly as they ran. Whatever secret your father has discovered, I'm with you. She squeezed his hand, briefly, a gesture that conveyed more than words could express. Together they plunged deeper into the darkness, pursued by men thirsting for gold, but guided by something far more valuable, the promise of redemption and the chance to protect an ancestral legacy that went far beyond human comprehension. The storm continued to roar over the mountains, as if the heavens themselves were taking part in the drama unfolding in their depths. And in the bowels of the earth, two unlikely allies were racing against time, carrying secrets that could change the fate of the Superstition Mountains forever. The tunnels seemed to breathe around them, the ancient heavy air pulsing with every step they took deeper into the bowels of the mountain. Nathan and Rosie advanced, guided only by the dim light of a lamp, the shadows dancing on the walls covered with ancient paintings that seemed to come to life in the dark. The symbols are changing, Rosa whispered, her fingers tracing increasingly elaborate marks on the rock. We're getting closer to the sanctuary. Nathan realized she was right. The simple drawings of trails and landmarks had given way to complex figures of warriors, spirits, and mystical creatures that seemed to watch them with eternal eyes. The distant echo of the voices of McCullough and his men still haunted them, reverberating through the tunnels like angry ghosts. How much deeper do we go? Nathan asked, noticing how the air was getting thicker and thicker. No mucho más, Rosa replied, stopping abruptly at a fork in the road. 3 tunnels opened up before them like dark mouths. This is where many have been lost forever. Nathan studied the entrances, all identical at first glance. How do we know which is the right way? Rosa raised the lamp, illuminating a series of symbols above each tunnel. Mi padre discovered that the Apache used a code in their paintings. See how the spirals connected to an ancient language that few can read? Before he could elaborate, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the tunnels, followed by the clang of metal bouncing off stone walls. McCullough was closer than they realized. This way, Rosa whispered, urgently, pulling Nathan into the tunnel on the right. And watch your step. She had barely finished speaking when Nathan felt the ground give way slightly under his feet. A metallic click sounded somewhere deep in the earth. No se mueva, Rosa ordered, grabbing his arm. Mi padre has installed traps to protect the path. Take a step to the left slowly. Nathan obeyed, feeling drops of cold sweat trickle down his back. As soon as he moved his foot, an entire section of the ground collapsed where he stood, revealing a deep pit whose bottom was lost in darkness. Your father was a cautious man, Nathan commented, trying to control his rapid breathing. He knew that McCullough would eventually find us, Rosa replied, carefully guiding him down the corridor. Each tunnel is protected not only by traps, but by something else, something the Apache left behind to keep their secrets. As if to confirm her words, an inexplicable wind blew through the tunnel, momentarily extinguishing the lamp. In the total darkness, Nathan swore he heard whispers in an unknown language, ancient voices that seemed to come from the stones themselves. When Rosa turned the light back on, Nathan noticed that her expression had changed. There was a mixture of reverence and fear in her eyes. "The spirits are restless," she murmured. "They know that intruders are desecrating their sacred lands." They continued forward, each step calculated to avoid any more traps. The tunnel began to widen, and Nathan realized that the walls now shone with golden veins that flowed through the rock like frozen rivers. "Gold," he whispered, amazed. The Apache believed that these veins were the very veins of the earth, carrying not only wealth, but also spiritual power. That's why they considered these caves sacred. A cry of triumph echoed in the distance. McCullough's men had found the entrance to the tunnel. Rosa hastened her pace, guiding Nathan through a series of bends that seemed designed to disorientate. "We're almost there," she whispered. "The sanctuary is just..." Her words were interrupted when they emerged into a massive circular chamber, so high that the lamplight couldn't reach its ceiling. Ancient wooden and stone structures built by the Apache centuries ago still stood like silent sentinels. In the center of the chamber, a circle of stones marked what appeared to be a ceremonial site. Above it, elaborate paintings covered the walls in ascending spirals, telling stories that Nathan could barely understand. "This is it," Rosa said, her voice trembling with emotion. "The place my priest died protecting, the true treasure of the Superstition Mountains." Nathan watched in amazement as she lit ancient torches fixed to the walls, revealing the true magnitude of the place. It wasn't just a gold mine, it was a temple and archive of ancient knowledge that had survived for generations. "What did your father discover here?" he asked, feeling the weight of history around him. Rosa approached a stone altar in the center of the ceremonial circle. He discovered that gold was only a small part of something bigger. The Apache didn't just keep riches here, they kept knowledge. Secrets about the land, about healing, about how to talk to the spirits. "Is that why McCullough killed him? For knowledge, for power?" Rosa corrected, her eyes shining in the torchlight. "Mi padre discovered that some of the rituals performed here could change people, give them abilities they shouldn't have." The sound of voices and footsteps echoed closer, interrupting his explanation. McCullough and his men were approaching, probably following the light of the torches. "We don't have much time," Rosa said urgently, removing a leather package from her bag. "Nathan, I need you to understand, what we do now will change everything. Not just our lives, but the fate of these mountains." Nathan looked at the extraordinary woman before him, then at the ancient paintings that told stories of long-forgotten power and wisdom. In his heart, he knew that the time had come for his true redemption. "What do we need to do?" he asked, his voice firm despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. Rosa smiled, that same enigmatic smile that had intrigued him since the first day in the hut. "We need to complete what mi padre started," she replied, unwrapping the package to reveal an ancient Apache artifact. "Entrust that the spirits will guide us on the right path." The shrine pulsed with an ancient energy as Rosa prepared the ritual, her hands moving with practiced precision over the stone altar. Nathan stood guard near the entrance to the chamber, his revolver ready, aware of the ever-closer echoes of McCullough's men. "What exactly did your father find here?" Nathan asked, watching Rosa arrange various ritual objects in a specific pattern: crystals, dried herbs, and what appeared to be an ancient Apache amulet. "The Apache believed that these caves were portals," she explained, her voice low and reverent. "Places where the spirit world and ours touched. Mi padre discovered that the rituals performed here could awaken something in people, a connection with the forces of the earth." "What kind of connection?" "Healing power beyond the natural. The ability to see what is hidden. Some say even control over the elements." Rosa paused, lighting small bundles of herbs that filled the air with an aromatic smoke. "But there's a price. There's always a price." The sound of a gunshot echoed through the tunnels closer now. Nathan tensed, moving instinctively to protect Rosa. McCullough wants that power, he concluded, not just the gold. See, he saw me Padre use Apache knowledge to cure a fever that was killing people in the town. Since then, his obsession is no longer just about wealth. Rosa raised her eyes, meeting Nathan's gaze. He wants to become something more than human. A supernatural wind began to circulate through the chamber, making the flames of the torches dance violently. Nathan felt his hair stand on end as ancient voices seemed to whisper in the shadows. The spirits are restless, Rosa murmured, her face illuminated by the golden glow of the torches. They know that desecrators are approaching the sacred place. And what do we do now? Nathan asked, feeling the weight of the moment on his shoulders. Rosa held out her hand, inviting him to approach the altar. We need to complete the ritual that my priest began the night he died. He tried to seal this place to prevent its power from falling into the wrong hands. But he didn't have time to finish it. Nathan hesitated only for a moment before taking her hand. Rosa's skin was hot, as if an inner fever was consuming her. Why me? Why didn't you complete the ritual on your own before? Because it takes more than Apache blood to seal the portal, she explained, guiding him into the stone circle. It takes someone who has known both darkness and light. Someone in search of redemption. The voices in the tunnels were closer now. Nathan could make out McCullough's hoarse voice, ordering his men to search every passage. Rosa began to sing in an ancient language, words that seemed older than the mountains themselves. The air around them became dense, charged with static electricity that made Nathan's hair stand on end. Give me your hands, she instructed briefly, interrupting her singing. When Nathan obeyed, she pressed the ancient amulet between their joined palms. Now close your eyes and remember. Remember what? The moment you chose to change. The moment you realized that there was more to life than greed and violence. Nathan closed his eyes, letting the memories flow. He remembered the moment he woke up in Rose's hut, wounded and vulnerable. The way she had treated him not as a bandit, but as a man worthy of salvation. The energy in the shrine intensified. Nathan could feel the ancient power coursing through him like an underground river finally finding its way to the surface. The spirits are responding, Rosa whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. They recognize your truth, your quest for redemption. A shot exploded at the entrance to the chamber, followed by McCullough's thunderous voice. What a touching scene, the last of the Martinezes and their pet thug trying to steal what is rightfully mine. Nathan opened his eyes to see McCullough and 3 of his men advancing on the camera gun's draw. The leader of the bandits was exactly as Rosa had described him, tall with a deep scar across his right eye, in a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Don't interrupt the ritual, Rosa whispered urgently to Nathan. No matter what. McCullough laughed, a mirthless sound that echoed off the ancient walls. Still trying to follow in your father's footsteps, Rosa, he also believed he could control the powers of this place. Look how that ended for him. Mi Padre died protecting something sacred from men like you. Rosa replied, her voice firm despite the fear visible in her eyes. He understood that there is knowledge that shouldn't belong to anyone. Knowledge is power, dear. McCullough advanced, his eyes shining with a feverish light. And power is all that matters in this world. Nathan felt the amulet between his hands begin to heat up, pulsing like a living heart. The energy in the shrine was changing, the shadows on the walls seeming to take on form and substance. Last words, Rosa. McCullough raised his revolver, aiming directly at her heart. Perhaps you'd like to share your father's secrets before you meet him. The secrets are not mine to share, Rosa replied, her voice taking on a tone Nathan had never heard before, ancient, powerful, as if other voices were speaking through her. They belong to the earth, to the spirits, to the blood spilled in these sacred tunnels. The amulet between Nathan's hands began to glow with a golden light, and he felt an ancient power flow through his body. The paintings on the walls of the shrine seemed to move, dancing with a life of their own as the ritual reached its climax. McCullough realized too late what was happening. Shoot, he shouted to his men, but before they could pull the triggers, the true magic of the Superstition Mountains began to reveal itself. The shrine vibrated with ancient energy as the golden light of the amulet intensified between Nathan and Rose's joined hands. The paintings on the walls seemed to dance with a life of their own, casting shadows that moved like restless spirits in the depths of the mountain. McCullough and his men instinctively stepped back as the ground beneath their feet began to shake. "What have you done?" he roared, his voice betraying a primal fear that contrasted with his usual arrogance. "The spirits have chosen your side," Rosa replied, her voice still carrying that supernatural tone that sent shivers down Nathan's spine. The power that flowed through the amulet now seemed to connect them in a deep and inexplicable way. Nathan felt every beat of his heart synchronize with the pulsations of energy emanating from the artifact. Memories that were not his own began to flow through his mind, ancient rituals, sacred chants, generations of Apache guardians protecting the secrets of the mountain. "Shoot," McCullough ordered again, but when his men pulled the triggers, the bullets simply dissolved in a golden dust before they hit the ritual circle. Rosa began to chant louder words in Apache that seemed to make the stones themselves resound in response. Nathan saw the gold veins in the walls glow with increasing intensity, as if the precious metal were awakening from an ancient slumber. "The power you seek, McCullough," Rosa declared, her eyes now glowing with an inner fire, "was not made for men like you. It is part of the earth itself, the blood and bones of my ancestors." "You fool," McCullough stepped forward, ignoring the supernatural power manifesting around him. "Your father also tried to stop me. He also believed he could control these primitive forces. Do you know what I discovered when I killed him? That in the end, everyone bleeds the same color." Nathan felt Rosa's anger flow through their shared connection, but there was something else, a deep sadness for the corruption that greed could cause in the human soul. Through her eyes, he finally understood the true meaning of the power stored in the mountains. "Mi padre died protecting something greater than gold or power," Rosa replied, golden tears streaming down her face. He understood that some forces must remain free, wild as the desert wind. The amulet between her hands began to pulse faster, its glow now so intense that it illuminated the entire chamber. Nathan felt the ancestral power growing inside him, mixing with his own memories of redemption and transformation. The Apache believed, Rosa continued, her voice echoing with the wisdom of generations, that the earth has its own will, that it chooses its guardians, those who respect its mysteries without trying to dominate them. McCullough laughed bitterly, but there was a tremor in his voice. "Always the same Indian stories. Always the same tales about spirits and mystical forces. Do you know what I've learned in all these years of treasure hunting? That real power comes from the barrel of a gun." He raised his revolver again, aiming directly at Rosa's heart. Nathan tried to move to protect her, but she held him firmly in place, her hands still clasped over the pulsating amulet. "No," she whispered to him. "This is how it should be." McCullough's fingers squeezed the trigger, just as the ritual reached its climax. The shot echoed through the chamber like subterranean thunder, but the bullet never reached its destination. Instead, a wave of golden energy exploded from the amulet, expanding in concentric circles that made the walls of the cave groan. Nathan watched amazed and terrified as the veins of gold in the walls literally began to move, flowing like rivers of liquid light. McCullough and his men screamed as the precious metal began to snake across the floor towards them like luminous snakes thirsting for revenge. "Is this what you wanted so badly?" Rosa asked, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. The true power of the gold of the Superstition Mountains. "Then take it if you can." The bandits' screams echoed through the chamber as the liquid gold reached them, enveloping them in shiny cocoons that quickly solidified. McCullough fought until the last moment, his last words lost in a scream of terror as the precious metal sealed his fate. The silence that followed was deep and sacred. Nathan looked at the golden statues that were once McCullough and his men, their expressions of horror eternalized in the precious metal they coveted so much. "It's over," Rosa muttered, her strength beginning to fail. The shine in her eyes gradually dimmed, returning to the deep brown that Nathan knew so well. He held her as her legs weakened, the amulet now cold and lifeless between them. "What happened to them?" "The land claimed what was rightfully theirs," she replied softly. "They wanted the gold so badly. Now they're part of it forever." Nathan looked at the statues again, feeling a shiver run down his spine. What happens now? What happens to this place? Rosa leaned on him, exhausted but serene. The ritual is complete. The portal is sealed. No one will ever be able to use its powers for evil again. She touched his face gently. But there is one last duty we must fulfill. What? We need to ensure that these tunnels are never found again, that the secrets of the Superstition Mountains remain buried where they belong. Nathan nodded, finally understanding his role in the whole story. It wasn't just about personal redemption, it was about becoming the guardian of something greater than himself, greater than any material treasure. Together they began the work of sealing the entrances to the shrine, leaving behind the golden statues as an eternal reminder of the price of greed. And in the depths of the earth, the Apache spirits sang their ancient songs of protection, pleased with their new guardians. The rising sun found Nathan and Rosa emerging from the depths of the Superstition Mountains, their exhausted silhouettes jagged against the orange Arizona sky. The ritual had left invisible marks on both of them, not just in physical tiredness, but in a profound change that seemed to resonate in their very souls. "How are you feeling?" Nathan asked, watching Rosa as she leaned against a rock to rest. The power that had flowed through her during the ritual seemed to have taken its toll, leaving her pale and trembling. "As if I lived 1,000 lives in a single night," she replied, a small smile playing on her lips. "The spirits, they shared much more than I expected. Memories, knowledge, old pains that aren't mine to carry." Nathan nodded, understanding. During the ritual, he had also experienced fragments of past lives: Apache warriors defending sacred lands, healers performing ancient ceremonies, Rosa's own father discovering the secrets of the mountain. These memories now blended with her own, like paints in a still fresh watercolor. "We need to get back to the hut," Rosa continued, forcing herself to stand. "There are preparations to be made before we can completely seal off the tunnels." "What kind of preparations?" Mi Padre left instructions, documents that need to be preserved but also partly destroyed. Knowledge needs to be protected, but it can't fall into the wrong hands again. They made their way back in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. The surrounding desert seemed different now, more alive, more aware. Nathan could feel the echoes of ancestral power reverberating through the earth like distant music that you only realize when you learn to listen. In the hut, Rosa immediately began sorting through documents and artifacts, organizing them into 2 separate piles. Nathan watched fascinated as she worked with an efficiency born of years of keeping secrets. These, she indicated the smaller pile, are the records that should survive. Coded maps, protection, ritual, stories that need to be remembered. The rest, she looked at the larger pile with a mixture of sadness and determination. The rest must become ashes. "Like your father wanted," Nathan added softly. "See." Rosa ran her fingers through an old diary, its pages yellowed by time. He knew that knowledge is like fire: it can warm and illuminate, but also destroy if left unchecked. While Rosa organized the documents, Nathan kept guard, aware that other bandits might appear attracted by the rumors of gold and power. But something had changed in his posture. He was no longer just an outlaw protecting a treasure, but a guardian defending something sacred. "Do you know what's strangest?" he commented, looking out of the window at the distant mountains. "For the first time in my life, I don't feel like looking for the next big score. It's as if I'd found something more valuable than gold," Rosa added, understanding perfectly. "The ritual didn't just seal the tunnels, Nathan. It marked us. It chose us." He turned to her, noticing how the sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, creating a golden halo around them. "What for? To be guardians. To keep the secret to the mountain safe, even if that means never being able to live as we did before." The realization of what that meant weighed heavily on them. It wasn't just a question of protecting a place. It was a lifelong commitment, a fundamental change in who they were and what they would become. "What if others like McCullough come?" Nathan asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the revolver in its holster. "They will," Rosa answered with certainty. "Power calls power like water calls thirst. But now we're more than just a healer and a bandit. The spirits have given us tools we haven't even begun to understand." As if to prove her point, she raised her hand and muttered words in Apache. A gentle breeze blew through the hut, carrying with it the scent of herbs and wet earth, a reminder of the power that now coursed through her veins. "I'll need to learn a lot." Nathan admitted, watching in amazement as the breeze made the papers dance gently. "We'll learn together," Rosa corrected, a gentle smile lighting up her tired face. "Apache knowledge is not easy to master, but you have something that many power seekers don't have. What a heart willing to change. A soul that has chosen redemption over greed." Nathan felt the weight of those words along with an emotion that had been growing ever since Rosa had saved him days ago. It wasn't just gratitude or admiration, it was something deeper, truer than any feeling he had ever experienced. "What about us?" he asked softly, giving voice to the question that had been hanging between them since the ritual. "What happens now?" Rosa moved closer, gently touching his scarred face. "Now we walk together as the spirits wish. Our history is intertwined with that of the mountains. It couldn't be any other way." The sun was high when they finished organizing the documents. The pile, destined for the flames, was burned with reverence, its ashes scattered to the wind with ancient words of protection. The documents that survived were carefully stored in a secret place that only the true guardians would know about. "There's one more thing we need to do," Rosa said when they had finished, her expression serious. "We need to return to the tunnels one last time. There is a final sealing ritual that can only be performed when the sun is at its highest." Nathan nodded, understanding that his transformation from outlaw to guardian, from lost man to protector of ancient secrets, was almost complete. The road ahead would be unlike anything he had ever known, but for the first time in his life, he felt he was truly in the right place. "I'm ready," he replied, his voice firm with new determination. Rosa smiled, that smile that had begun to change her world days ago. "Then let's go meet Guardia. The mountains await us." The sun was reaching its zenith when Nathan and Rosa returned to the sacred tunnels to perform the final sealing ritual. The air in the depths of the mountains seemed denser, now laden with the weight of centuries of ancient history and magic. The golden statues that were once McCullough and his men stood like silent sentinels, an eternal warning about the price of greed. The ritual must be performed in the heart of the sanctuary, Rosa explained, her voice echoing softly off the stone walls. "It's where the lines of power meet, where the magic of the earth is strongest." Nathan watched as she prepared the ritual circle, arranging crystals and herbs in specific patterns that seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. The ancestral knowledge they had received during the first ritual still reverberated in their minds like an underground river of wisdom they were only just beginning to understand. The Apache believed, Rosa continued, lighting candles made from wild beeswax, that each generation of guardians left their mark on the mountains, an imprint of their souls that became part of the land itself. "Is that why we can feel their memories?" Nathan asked, touching the old paintings on the walls that now seemed to vibrate under his fingers. "As if they were part of us, see? The ritual didn't just choose us as guardians, it connected us with everyone who came before." Rosa stopped her work, looking deeply into Nathan's eyes. "It's an endless circle like the seasons. Each guardian adds their own story to the fabric of the mountain." Nathan felt the weight of that responsibility settle more deeply on his shoulders. It wasn't just a question of protecting a place, it was becoming part of something much bigger than themselves, a tradition that stretched back through the centuries like the very roots of the mountains. "What will happen when we complete the ritual?" he asked, watching Rosa arrange the last crystal in the circle. "The main tunnels will be sealed off, accessible only to those who bear the mark of the guardians," she explained, removing the Apache amulet from her bag. "But more than that, our lives will change forever. The power granted to us, it demands a price." "What kind of price?" Rosa hesitated, her dark eyes reflecting the candlelight. "We will be bound to these lands, Nathan, not just out of duty, but out of necessity. The guardians can't stray too far from the mountains without feeling their strength diminish. It's a life of service, of total dedication." Nathan processed this information, thinking about how drastically his life had changed in just a few days. From an aimless outlaw, he had become part of something sacred and eternal. The thought should have frightened him, but instead it brought a sense of peace he had never known. "I'm ready," he said, simply holding out his hands to her. Rosa smiled, that smile that had begun to change his world from day one. Together they entered the ritual circle, the amulet pulsing between their joined hands like a living heart. The chanting began softly, ancient Apache words flowing from Rosa's lips like water from a crystal-clear spring. Nathan joined in instinctively, the ancestral knowledge guiding his voice into a perfect harmony that made the stones themselves vibrate in response. The energy began to grow around them more intense than the first time. The gold veins in the walls shone like rivers of liquid light pulsating to the rhythm of his singing. Nathan could feel the power flowing through him no longer as an external force but as a natural part of his being. "The spirits are responding," Rosa whispered between the words of the chant. "They recognize our union, our dedication to the path of the Guardians." The memories began to flow more intensely, generations of Apache performing sacred rituals, healers sharing ancestral knowledge, warriors defending the mountains from invaders. Each memory became part of them, weaving their souls deeper into the mystical fabric of the place. The amulet between his hands glowed brighter and brighter, its golden light filling the entire chamber. Nathan felt something transform inside him, as if every drop of blood in his veins was being rewritten with ancient magic, every beat of his heart synchronizing with the pulse of the mountain itself. "It is time," Rosa announced, her voice carrying the power of hundreds of guardians before her. "The final sealing must be done with blood and love, the two most powerful elements we know." She produced a small ritual knife, its blade decorated with Apache symbols. With one smooth movement, she made a small cut in the palm of her hand, then in Nathan's hand. When their bleeding hands joined over, the amulet power exploded around them like a storm of golden light. The walls of the shrine shook not violently, but with divine purpose. Nathan watched in amazement as the tunnels began to transform, some passages closing completely, others reconfiguring themselves in a labyrinth that only true guardians could navigate. "It's done," Rosa murmured as the power began to wane, her hands still entwined with Nathan's. "The secrets of the Superstition Mountains are safe once again." Nathan pulled her close, feeling how their hearts beat in perfect sync. "What about us? What happens now?" "Now we begin our true journey," she replied, touching his face gently. "As guardians, as partners, as souls chosen by the spirits to protect something sacred." The shrine seemed to breathe around them like a living being, content with its choices. The candles flickered softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls that now held not only old stories but also the beginning of a new one. "I never thought I'd find a purpose like this," Nathan confessed, his eyes reflecting the golden glow that still hung in the air. "Let alone someone to share it with." Rosa smiled, that smile that had started it all, that had shown a wounded bandit the way to redemption. "The spirits always knew me more. They just waited for the right moment to unite us." Together they began the journey back to the surface, leaving behind the transformed sanctuary. But now they carried their magic within them, in hearts that beat as one, in souls marked by ancestral power, and in the love that had been born between the shadows of the Superstition Mountains. The months that followed the sealing ritual brought profound changes, not only for Nathan and Rosa, but for the entire region of the Superstition Mountains. Stories about the events in the underground sanctuaries spread like wildfire through the territory, blending with ancient Apache legends until reality and myth became indistinguishable. Rosa's cabin, once a solitary refuge, became a center of healing and wisdom. People came from far and wide, seeking not only traditional remedies, but also glimpses of the mysterious power that now emanated from the place. Nathan watched with admiration as Rosa balanced her role as healer with her new responsibilities as guardian, never revealing the true secrets of the mountains, but always offering help to those who really needed it. "It's strange," she commented one afternoon as they watched the sunset from the newly built balcony. "I've spent so long looking for riches, and now I'm holding the greatest treasure of all without being able to tell anyone." Rosa smiled, her hands busy with a new protective amulet she was weaving. "The real treasure was never gold, Mia Moore. It was knowledge, the connection to something greater than ourselves." Nathan nodded, feeling the ancestral power pulsing through him like second nature. Over the last few months, he had learned to control the abilities granted by the ritual, the ability to sense disturbances in the earth, to communicate with the spirits of the mountains, to heal minor injuries with a touch. But more importantly, he had learned to find peace in his new purpose. We had another visitor today. Rosa continued, her expression more serious. A man looking for information about McCullough and his men. He said he was a bounty hunter. And what did you tell him? The same story we told everyone, that McCullough and his gang disappeared into the mountains, probably victims of their own greed. She paused, her fingers unconsciously tracing the scar on his neck. But there's something else. The spirits are restless again. Nathan straightened up, instantly alert. During his patrols of sacred territory, he had learned to trust the subtle warnings that the earth sent through its mystical connection. What kind of disquiet changes are coming? Rosa replied, her eyes fixed on the distant mountains. The world outside is changing rapidly. Railroads, telegraphs, new cities springing up where before there was only desert. Soon places like this will become rarer and rarer. Then we need to prepare, Nathan concluded, understanding the concern in his voice. Find a way to protect the secrets even when civilization gets here. Rosa nodded, getting up to go into the hut. She returned moments later with an aged leather package, the last documents saved from the shrine. Mi Padre foresaw this. In his last writings, he talked about the need to adapt the old ways to the new times. Together they examined the documents in the twilight. Nathan had learned to read Spanish in recent months, guided by Rosa's patience and the need to understand the sacred texts. Her father's words seemed more relevant than ever. The secrets of the mountains must survive not only in rituals and shrines, but in the hearts of those who choose to protect them. True power lies not in gold or magic, but in the wisdom to know when to change and when to stand firm. He was right, Rosa murmured, carefully closing the diary. We need to find others, people with the right heart to become guardians when our time comes to leave. Nathan pulled her close, feeling how their hearts beat in perfect sync, one of the many gifts the ritual had granted them. We'll start tomorrow. There's that young Apache woman who came last week, the one who could see spirits. And the blacksmith from the new town, Rosa added, a smile forming on her lips. The one who dreams of the mountains, even though he's never been here. The sun finally disappeared behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold reminiscent of the glow of the holy shrine. Nathan thought about how his life had changed completely since that fateful day when he was found bleeding in the desert. From a man with no purpose beyond the next robbery, he had become part of something eternal and sacred. Do you know what's most incredible? He asked, watching the first stars appear in the sky. For the first time in my life, I don't miss the old thrill of the trails. It's like I found something I've always been looking for without knowing it. Rosa touched his face, gently, her fingers tracing the scars that told stories of his past. The spirits have always known your destiny, Nathan Drake. You just had to be ready to accept it. The night wind blew across the valley, carrying with it the ancient whispers of the mountains. Somewhere in the depths of the earth, the sealed sanctuary continued its eternal vigil, its golden chambers guarding not only material treasures, but also the promise that some secrets are too important to lose. Nathan and Rosa stayed out on the balcony late into the night, planning for the future, while the stars slowly rotated in the sky above. They were more than just a former outlaw and a healer. Now, they were guardians of an ancestral legacy, protectors of mysteries that transcended time and space. And in the Superstition Mountains, where legend and reality intertwined, like the very veins of gold in the rocks, their story would continue to be told in whispers around campfires, a reminder that true power lies not in what you can possess, but in what you choose to protect.